All right, welcome back to the channel. Let's get into this one because it's wild. So picture this. A woman from Texas becomes one of the most talked about people on the planet. Not because she was famous, not because she did anything heroic, but because her life took one of the darkest, strangest, most unexpected turns imaginable. And by the time it all played out, the entire world was arguing about her. Politicians, religious leaders, celebrities, even people who normally never agree on anything somehow ended up on the same side of her case. Yeah, this is the story of Karla Faye Tucker, a story that starts in absolute chaos, plunges into something brutally disturbing, then shoots upward into worldwide controversy, redemption arcs, last-minute pleas for mercy, and an ending that shook Texas to its core. And the craziest part? Most people only know one version of her story. Today, you're getting the full thing. Let's go. Karla's life didn't just go bad. It felt like someone threw a bowling ball down a staircase and watched it bounce, crash, and smash everything on the way down. She was the youngest of 3 sisters in Houston, Texas, born into a home where stability was pretty much a myth. Her parents' marriage was falling apart faster than she could keep track of, and, as she would later learn, her birth wasn't even the result of that marriage. Nope, it came from an affair. A discovery like that at age 10? That alone could twist any kid's view of the world. She started smoking at 8 years old. Most kids are still learning how to ride a bike, and she was learning how to inhale. By 12, she was already on drugs and having sex, and by 14, she dropped out of school completely, following her mom, Carolyn, into a rock band, roadies, groupies, substances, and a whole lifestyle where rules basically didn't exist. Her mom took her on the road with bands like the Allman Brothers and the Marshall Tucker Band. Imagine being a teenager surrounded by a world where you can do pretty much anything and no one tells you no. Except the anything is usually something that'll blow your life up later. By 16, Karla had already been married. A quick, chaotic relationship with a handyman named Stephen Griffith. Spoiler, it didn't fix anything. After that, her life got even messier. She fell in with a biker crowd, people who lived fast and burned out even faster. That's where she met a woman named Shawn Dean, who then married a guy named Jerry Dean, and who would later introduce Karla to the man that would change absolutely everything about her life. Danny Garrett. And honestly, that meeting set off a chain reaction you could never reverse. But that wasn't even the beginning of the chaos. Because once Danny entered the picture, everything accelerated. So here's where things get stormy, like there's a tornado outside and you're holding a kite. Stormy. Karla meets Danny Garrett through Shawn and Jerry Dean. Danny wasn't some random guy. He was a biker, he was older, he was deep into drug use, and his entire life revolved around that underground world where nobody cared about tomorrow. Karla fell into that environment like it was quicksand. She and Danny started hanging out constantly, partying, using, staying awake for days, drifting between houses, and basically living in a blur. Their entire relationship seemed to run on adrenaline and substances. For someone whose life had never been stable to begin with, this felt normal. But for the rest of the world, it was a slow-motion disaster. Rumors later claimed that she idolized Danny. Others said she felt protected around him. Some said she was trying to impress him. Whatever the truth was, this pair fed off each other's chaos like gasoline feeding a fire. And on one particular weekend, a weekend fueled by heavy drug use and absolutely zero good decision-making, everything reached a boiling point. Because late at night in June 1983, Karla, Danny Garrett, and a friend named James Leibrandt decided they were going to break into Jerry Dean's apartment. And their reason wasn't money or revenge. They wanted to steal his bike, a fully restored motorcycle Jerry had been working on. And that little decision, that it's just a break-in what could go wrong moment, was about to lead to one of the most infamous cases in Texas history. All right, buckle up, because this part is dark. Seriously dark. It's around 3 a.m. on June 13th, 1983. Karla Faye Tucker and Danny Garrett entered Jerry Dean's apartment with keys that Karla said belonged to Shawn Dean. Meanwhile, their friend James Lee Brandt is outside, supposedly looking for Jerry's El Camino. Inside the apartment, Karla and Danny head straight for the bedroom. Jerry Dean is asleep, completely unaware that two people high out of their minds are standing over him. As they start rummaging around, things go sideways fast. Now, here's where the case turns from a burglary into something so brutal that it made national headlines.
So Danny grabs a ball-peen hammer and hits Jerry in the back of the head. Multiple times. Hard. Jerry starts making what Karla later described as a gurgling sound. A sound she said she wanted to stop. And in that moment, instead of leaving, instead of running, instead of even freezing in shock, she picks up a pickaxe leaning against the wall. Let that sink in. A literal pickaxe. And she strikes him. Again. And again. It doesn't end there. After the initial attack, Karla notices something under the bed covers. A second person. Someone who had nothing to do with any of this. Her name was Deborah Thornton. She had argued with her husband the night before and ended up staying at Jerry's place. Deborah wakes up to a nightmare, a stranger with a pickaxe standing over her. The two struggle until Danny comes back, separating them. And then Karla, still in a drug-fogged frenzy, swings the pickaxe again and again. One final blow pierces directly through Deborah's chest. Later, Karla would tell people something deeply disturbing, that she felt good during the act, to the point of claiming intense sensations with each swing. Today, most people believe it was the drugs talking, not a true emotional reaction. But those statements would haunt her public image forever. When the sun came up, a co-worker of Jerry's entered the apartment expecting to pick him up for work and instead found a scene that would shock even veteran officers. It took police 5 weeks to track down Karla and Danny. 5 weeks for the frenzy to collapse. But when they finally arrested her, she had no idea that the world was about to change its entire perception of her twice. When Karla was arrested, most people expected her to be defiant, cold, maybe even indifferent. Instead, something shifted. She was thrown into a world where, for the first time, the chaos stopped. No drugs, no partying, no noise. And in that silent void, something unexpected happened. Karla asked for a Bible. She read it in her cell. At first, she didn't understand any of it, but then she dropped to her knees on the cold floor and cried, hard. She claimed she asked for forgiveness, that something in her broke open. Whether someone believes in that sort of spiritual pivot or not, what's undeniable is that Karla Faye Tucker changed dramatically. In interviews, she didn't sound like the woman from the arrest reports. She sounded calmer, softer, more grounded. She joined Bible studies, maintained perfect behavior, started writing letters to victims' family members expressing regret. Some people said she was faking it. Others said it was the first moment in her life where she wasn't high, abused, manipulated, or lost. But regardless of motives, that transformation became the foundation of a global movement. Interestingly, Karla testified against Danny during his trial. And while she had originally been charged with 2 killings, the charge for Deborah Thornton was dropped after her testimony. Danny, however, was still sentenced to death. He would die in prison in 1993 from liver disease, long before his execution date ever arrived. By the late 1980s and early 1990s, Karla's appeals kept getting denied, repeatedly. The system wasn't budging. But then something wild happened. People began paying attention, not because she was a woman, not because of the brutality, but because her transformation felt genuine to the outside world, and it was happening at a time when the death penalty was under massive public scrutiny. And Karla, she accidentally became the center of that storm. Now this is where things get really intense and really unusual for a Texas capital case. In June 1998, Karla filed a major request. She asked for clemency, arguing that she was under the influence of heavy drugs and wasn't herself at the time of the killings. But she also argued something deeper, that she had fundamentally changed and was no longer a threat to anyone. Normally, that argument goes nowhere, especially in Texas. But her request didn't just catch attention, it caught fire. Suddenly, religious leaders were speaking up. UN officials weighed in, foreign government officials, American politicians, conservative leaders, liberal activists, even televangelists. Among the people asking Texas to show mercy, Pope John Paul II, UN officials, Prime Minister Romano Prodi, Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich, Pat Robertson, who shocked his own audience by supporting Karla, and most surprisingly, Ronnie Carlson, the brother of Deborah Thornton, one of the victims. He initially supported the execution, later had a religious change of heart, and publicly begged for her life to be spared. That's rare, extremely rare.
Karla became an international headline. The woman Texas wants to execute. A question of redemption. Can a murderer truly change? Documentaries, news panels, protests, rallies, all eyes were on Texas. People weren't arguing about whether she did it. That part was proven. They were arguing about what justice looked like when a person genuinely transformed. But Texas wasn't swayed. On January 28, 1998, the parole board rejected her appeal. And on February 3, 1998, the same day as her scheduled execution, Governor George W. Bush declined the final request to stop it. In Texas, governors can't just grant clemency outright. They can only approve it if the board recommends it, and they didn't. So now it was official. Karla would become the first woman executed in Texas in 135 years. Whether people agreed or disagreed, everyone knew the execution would send shockwaves throughout the country. February 3, 1998, the day everything reaches its final chapter. The state transports Karla from the Mountain View unit to Huntsville, not in a van, but on a TDCJ aircraft. Just the flight alone caught media attention because hardly anyone had seen that before. Her demeanor? Calm, almost surreal. Guards later said she thanked everyone she encountered. She hugged officers, she prayed, and she kept telling people she wasn't afraid. Her last meal was surprisingly simple: a banana, a peach, and a garden salad with ranch. Nothing dramatic, nothing indulgent, just light food. She chose 4 witnesses: her sister, her husband, who she married by proxy inside the prison, a close friend, and Ronnie Carlson, the victim's brother, who had forgiven her. On the victim's side, there were family members holding on to a pain that had lasted 15 years. As the witnesses filled the room, Karla was strapped to the gurney. She looked around at everyone and then delivered her final words. They weren't angry or defiant. They weren't self-pitying. They were remorseful. She apologized to both families. She told them she loved them. She told Ronnie to give Peggy a hug. She thanked the prison staff for their kindness. And her last line? She said she was going to meet Jesus. As the injection began, she hummed. She licked her lips, and she looked upward, staying calm until the end. 8 minutes later, at 6:45 p.m., she was legally gone. No woman in Texas had been executed since 1863. And after Karla's case, no woman would be executed there again for years. Her legacy was just beginning. After Karla Faye Tucker died, something strange happened. The conversation didn't end. It exploded even bigger. The global debate over whether she should have been executed never faded. Some said justice was served, that remorse doesn't erase what happened. Others said executing someone who had radically changed defeated the purpose of rehabilitation. Churches debated it, families debated it, legislatures debated it. She became a symbol, depending on who you asked, either of true transformation, a failure of mercy, a necessary punishment, or a human tragedy wrapped in addiction, trauma, poor choices, and bad influences. Documentaries followed, books were written, her letters became published. Even politicians referenced her case during discussions about capital punishment. To this day, her name still appears in debates about redemption and justice. One thing everyone agrees on, Texas had never handled a case quite like hers, and none has ever been exactly like it since. The story of Karla Faye Tucker isn't clean, isn't simple, isn't a fairy tale or morality play. It's messy, painful, violent, tragic, and deeply human. She was a child raised in chaos. She became a woman lost in addiction. She committed something horrific, something that left two innocent people dead. And then behind bars, she transformed into someone completely different, someone many believe genuinely changed. Some people think redemption should matter. Others believe some acts can't be forgiven, no matter what comes after. But whether you're for or against the death penalty, Karla Faye Tucker forces you to confront the hardest question in justice. If a person truly changes, does the system allow room for that? And that's the story. A wild, tragic, unbelievable roller coaster that still echoes through Texas and beyond. If you want more stories like this one, you know what to do. Thanks for watching.